He laughed across a room I paid for and called me unemployed. Ethan Cross, vice president of operations at Halcyon Dynamics, lifted his glass while his friends smirked and measured me like a failed interview. They did not know the marble, the artwork, the carefully muted lighting. Every square inch belonged to the woman they were mocking. They did not know that I, Veronica Hale, had built Halcyon from a rented garage in Northbridge and hidden my signature behind trusts and holding companies for a dozen years. Tomorrow at 9 a.m, the same men who joked about me trying the coffee shop would report to a boardroom they believed they controlled. At 9:05, their badges would stop working. At 9:10, the screens would light with receipts. By sunset, my husband would discover that the unemployed woman in his house was his boss, his founder, and his exit interview. I did not raise my voice. I set the table. I let him perform. Ethan loved an audience the way some men love oxygen. In our stone-quiet living room, he anchored 4 senior executives from Halcyon Dynamics, men I had hired through blind intermediaries to avoid flattery and fear. They sprawled on my furnishings, praised my scotch, told jokes that punched downward, and stitched my name into their punchline. "Maybe she should try for a barista shift," Ethan said, loosening his tie, watching his colleagues for the laugh. It came on cue, the same laugh I had recorded too many times in too many conference rooms when a resume carried the wrong school or the wrong last name. I sipped water and let the moment file itself. Behind a paneled wall, a concealed study hummed. Mirrored drives, redundant backups, a private line straight to Sarah Lynn, my chief of risk, and the only person in my orbit who knew the whole of me. My face held the expression I had practiced since the charity gala where I first met Ethan. A soft, self-deprecating smile that told ambitious men everything they wanted to believe. Years before Ethan, I learned that success attracts barnacles. 3 boyfriends in a row had studied my balance sheet harder than they studied me. When I began building Halcyon, an industrial software firm that stitched supply chains back together with code instead of slogans, I wrapped the founder, me, in paper. Trusts, managers, boards who never met me in person, a phantom chief executive who spoke through encrypted calls, a pen name on patents. The company became a coral reef of entities. I became Veronica the consultant, with a modest apartment and a car that did not ask for attention. Ethan had seemed different. He spoke fluent competence and held doors without checking whether anyone was watching. When we married, he moved into what he called our place. He never asked why the deed listed a trust he had never heard of. He liked that the refrigerator refilled itself and the art matched his jokes. The longer the mask stayed on, the more he explained the world to me. "Remember when she tried to interview at Halcyon?" Michael from marketing said now, feet on my oak table. I wish I had seen that train wreck. The interview he meant had been my quarterly secret shopper audit of mid-level leadership. I had watched a panel take turns practicing petty power, cutting off answers, swapping glances, yawning on cue. My notes from that morning became the first brick in a slow wall of evidence. I rose with a murmured excuse, "Big day tomorrow," and let them own the stage. Footage from the foyer camera clipped their exit. Unsteady steps, muttered bravado, drivers flagging their intoxication with dashcam reports that would slide into HR with timestamps and polite cover notes. In my room, I traded the silk dress for the plain pajamas I wore when I needed to be underestimated. I placed my ring on the nightstand and stared at it long enough to remember who had bought it. The hidden panel in my study sighed open. 3 monitors woke. Halcyon's global heartbeat appeared in green and amber. Factories humming, tickets closing, a weather alert nudging a distribution center to stage shipments inland before the storm. 12 years of building, one quiet choice at a time. My phone lit with Sarah's message. Final documentation signed. Board is briefed. 9 a.m. confirmed. Visitor badge staged. Visitor badge. Tomorrow's theater required a first act. An anxious applicant named Angela Moss, arriving early, wearing a department store suit, submitting to a skills assessment designed to bruise instead of measure. The easiest way to diagnose rot is to let it speak. Downstairs, glass broke. Laughter rose and fell like a bad chorus. I logged the incident, added the cost to Michael's personal ledger, and closed the folder labeled Protocol Lantern. My father used to say, "Success is not who shouts loudest. It is who keeps a ledger and a calendar." He had watched his small machine shop drowned by men who called themselves strategic. When I signed Halcyon's first incorporation papers, I wrote one line above the signature: "Never become the men who took him down. Build rules you would stand under yourself." At dawn, I would walk into my own company unrecognized. At dusk, I would lock my own front door without a husband inside. I turned off the monitors and the room went dark like a stage between scenes. At 6:30 in the morning, I used the freight elevator and the service corridor that smelled like cardboard and coffee. Alleys that keep a company alive. Sarah met me in security with a neutral face and a visitor badge that said, Angela Moss. My hair sat flatter than it liked. The suit had a tag I left on purpose. Clearance brand, pale thread showing if you looked. HR has you at 9, Sarah said. Ethan's team sits down at the same time. Peterson will keep them busy. Peterson, my plant, my patient weather vane inside operations, had been feeding me lines of code and conscience for months. I arrived in the lobby an hour early and held Halcyon's annual report like a tourist holds a guidebook. The guard glanced at me, then away. Executives in tailored navy flowed past with greetings for one another and none for me. Ethan strode in at 15 to 9, checked his reflection in the glass, and did not see me 2 chairs away. There is a specific narcotic to being invisible. I let it dull the impulse to stand. Ms. Moss, Thomas from HR smiled the smile of a man who has already made up his mind. Right this way. Open floor plan, glass conference rooms, tasteful greenery. All the things I had chosen to make people breathe easier. It only works if the people in the chairs are not sharks. Thomas launched the assessment. I made 2 small, forgivable mistakes, and 1 larger one that a hurried reviewer would circle without a second thought. The panel interview began with 3 mid-managers who had learned their craft on television. A weary woman who had outsprinted too many bosses, a man who admired his own watch, and a third who practiced superiority as though it were a language. Been between positions for some time? The watch asked. This market has been unkind, I said, adding a timid touch to my voice, keeping my hands still. The weary woman glanced up, almost human, then looked away as her phone buzzed. Through the glass, Ethan drifted by, saw me, and smiled into his screen. The panel's phones chimed in chorus. Their eyes warmed with the glow of a private joke. They took turns. They cut off answers. They taught me nothing I had not seen 100 times. I answered anyway. Crisp, specific, never defensive, the way I want our real candidates to be heard. My heart did not rise to defend me. The record would. Thank you for coming, Thomas said at last, relief and dismissal wrapped together. We will be in touch. I walked toward the elevator, paused behind the corner wall, and listened to Ethan's voice land like a thumbs-up emoji. No way that was your wife, someone said. She really is desperate, Ethan replied, target suit and all. They deserved the second act. In a restroom stall, a garment bag waited where Sarah had hidden it at dawn. The armor inside was not a costume. It was a confession. Charcoal skirt suit, silk shell, shoes that chose competence over apology. The Halcyon badge I had never worn where cameras could see it. I fastened my mother's simple pearls and heard her voice. Power does not need volume, V. It needs verbs. The hallway multiplied my footsteps. Heads turned. Recognition tried and failed to assemble. The private elevator, our ghost car, accepted my thumbprint, purred upward, and opened into the board corridor that only a handful of people had walked. Through frosted glass I saw silhouettes, directors waiting, legal counsel stacking folders, Peterson at the end with a face you wear when a plan is finally a scene. I went left first. Ethan and his small court were in the executive conference room. Coffees lined up like trophies. Voices pitched at the register men adopt when they believe no one worth listening to is listening. "You should have seen her," Ethan said. "Second-hand suit, shaking. Trying to be a strategist," Michael added. "Remember the Thompson pitch at your birthday? She tried to—" I stepped into the doorway and let the room tilt toward me. "I will deliver the update myself," I said, conversational as weather. Chairs scraped. The faces that had laughed now paled in synchronized silence. Ethan's mug halted in midair. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice too high. "Dressed like that?" Michael attempted a chuckle and swallowed it whole when no one joined. "Like this," I said, stepping inside and letting the badge catch the light. "Because I am the founder and chief executive of Halcyon Dynamics. You have met me as Veronica Cross, your unemployed wife. Please meet me as Veronica Hale, the person who hired and can fire you." I tapped my phone. Every screen, TV, laptop, tablet, wall display, blinked to the same document. Original incorporation, dated a dozen years ago, bearing my full legal name and a photograph younger than I felt. Behind it, tabs waited. Expense patterns, recordings, transcripts. The ugly collage of a culture that rewards cruelty because no one dares to name it. Ethan whispered, "Impossible." "Just inconvenient," I answered. He tried a smile I had once mistaken for charm. "Honey, let's—" "No." I kept my tone even. "I have allowed you to narrate long enough." 2 security officers waited in the doorway, not for drama, but for guardrails. "The board is next door," I said. "Your badges work for 10 more minutes. Use them to collect your dignity." Michael started to stand. "Sit," I said, not loud, not angry. He sat. I left them with their reflections and went to my board. The boardroom did not gasp. I had chosen directors who valued data over theater. They had met me for years as a modulated voice and a locked camera. Now they watched a person take the chair, sign her name, and begin. "Terminations for cause," I said, sliding a stack of folders down the table one by one. "All 5. Grounds include harassment, discrimination, misuse of company resources, and breaches of fiduciary duty. Evidence is cataloged, time-stamped, and preserved. Legal has reviewed every line. 12 pairs of eyes, 3 pens ticking in asynchronous time. A general counsel who nodded at the places where law and conscience already matched. We are also implementing structure," I continued. "Anonymous reporting with real teeth. Rotations that keep power porous. A hiring protocol that removes faces from resumes in first pass. Promotions tied to outcomes, not golf handicaps. And a 5-minute rule in every room with a candidate. If you cannot let them finish one answer, you are not invited to sit on the next panel." I signed the orders. Sarah deactivated badges. Security walked the men to exits without spectacle. Cameras recorded nothing you would want to post, only men discovering that automatic doors can stay closed. In my proper office, the one rumor had named the Nest and the Ghost Suite, glass ran from floor to ceiling. The city below wore sunlight like armor. Sarah stood at my desk with her tablet. "All access revoked," she said. "Legal has served notices. Non-competes are active. Personal effects are inventoried. The house locks changed at sunrise. His items will be delivered to his mother's address this afternoon." "Thank you," I said, meaning it and also meaning for all of it, all these years. She angled the tablet. "He is already posting," she said. A familiar profile on a professional network spun a narrative about strategic differences, about resignations to focus on family. We countered with a plain statement: 0 tolerance for harassment and discrimination. Leadership changes to align with values and law. "Company-wide at 10 tomorrow," I said. "I speak. Then I listen." By mid-afternoon, the building's internal chat carried every possible version of the story. I preferred my own. A founder chose to come out of the walls because looking away had turned too many decent people into ghosts. Ethan called. I declined. In the corner of my monitor, his name stacked calls like bad Jenga. His friends tried too. Legal swept them into a folder labeled Future Exhibits. We escalated in layers. HR reopened buried complaints. Forensics scraped expense accounts with curiosity instead of excuses. Sarah's team sent polite packages to a competitor's counsel. A recording from last night's bar where a familiar group offered to bring a book of business if titles were guaranteed. Federal regulators called before dinner. I put them on speaker and told the truth. At 9 the next morning, I stepped onto a small stage in a packed auditorium while cameras blinked to departments in other cities and other time zones. The hush felt like a held breath. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Veronica Hale. I founded Halcyon Dynamics 12 years ago in a rented garage. Some of you know me as Mrs. Cross. Today, you will know me as your leader." I did not name Ethan. I did not need to. "Yesterday, we terminated 5 executives for cause," I continued. "Documentation is complete, and investigations are underway. This is not a scandal story, it is a standard story. Here is what changes today." I walked them through reporting, hiring, mentorship stipends for first-generation professionals, a public calendar for leadership office hours, a promise written in verbs: file, review, respond, repair. I told them my door was open. Then I proved it. The applause was not wild, it was relieved. Relief is better than fireworks. It lasts. Afterward, I met with the people who had lived under Ethan's org chart. 1 resigned for the right reasons. 2 gave us details that filled in the corners. Several asked whether they were safe now. I told them safety is not a promise, it is a practice. We would practice. By sunset, we had new managers in interim roles, old projects in steadier hands, and a meeting on the books with the Thompson account, the one Ethan had ridiculed when I brought home a sketch on a napkin months ago. They wanted to hear the plan from me. They would. That night, Sarah walked in with coffee and a question she had saved for when the room was only us. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I looked at the wall of monitors, each one a different proof that people breathe better when the rules are written in daylight. I thought about my father labeling jars in a shop that never got a second chance. I thought about every quiet candidate who told a panel the truth and then watched the panel admire itself. "Ask me again in a week," I said, "because I will not lie to the person who has carried me." But today felt like the right verb. Outside, the city exhaled. Somewhere across town, a man opened boxes he had not paid for in a house that was no longer mine to enter. I did not feel triumphant. I felt the particular calm of a ledger that finally balances after years of careful math. By noon, the building had settled into a new gravity. People walked differently when the mirror on the wall told the truth back. I spent the first hour after the all-hands in a glass conference room with no frosting on the panes. Daylight was a rule now. Frontline engineers arrived first, shoulders tight, questions measured. "Will complaints vanish again?" one asked, voice low from habit. "They will be logged, time-stamped, and resolved in writing," I said. "If any report is closed without action, my name will be under it, and you will know." A project manager with circles beneath her eyes hesitated at the door, then sat and slid a folder across the table. "This is 3 years of what we tried to fix," she said. "Names, patterns, the petty empires that grow when no one tends the garden." I did not flinch. I thanked her, and I signed the receipt on the last page so the chain of custody started here, not in rumor. In my office, Sarah briefed me like a metronome, even, precise, relentless. Internal audit has already pulled expense anomalies from the last 3 fiscal years. A screen filled with charges that added up to entitlement. I want them fed to legal hourly, I said. No more end-of-quarter surprises. She nodded. The Thompson meeting is at 2. They asked for you and your napkin. The napkin is in the museum, I said, and smiled. Bring the working draft. At 1:45, I walked into the smaller boardroom we reserve for clients who matter, and for apologies. Mr. Thompson shook my hand without performance. His team set laptops down and watched me the way people watch a surgeon, alert to steadiness and hands. First, we owe you honesty, I began. You were misled by someone who used our logo like a cape. That person is gone. Here is the architecture we should have proposed months ago. For 40 minutes, we worked. Not a demo, not theater. Code diagrams on glass, risks named without flattery, costs stated without romance. At the end, Mr. Thompson closed his notebook. We did not know what was wrong, he said. We only felt it. Now I see it. Double the scope. When the room cleared, I stood alone and let my pulse slow. Victory felt less like applause than like oxygen returning to a sealed room. Back at my desk, Sarah tapped her screen. External noise, she said. Predictable. Ethan's mother is online. On one corner of my monitor, a familiar face filled a television frame. Voice tremulous, language careful. I listened until the part where she called me a manipulator and a mistake. I did not answer. Then the segment pivoted to 3 former employees who spoke with names attached, dates remembered, emails printed and held up to the camera like weather maps before a storm. I did not answer that either. HR did, with facts. Facts make better anchors than adjectives. Security swept Ethan's office again, Sarah added. We found a second phone taped beneath the credenza. Burner. Catalog, extract, and forward, I said. If it is clean, it is clean. If it is not, it is ours. At 5, my calendar blinked to gray, and I left the building through the front doors. No ghost elevator, no service corridor. People in the lobby looked up, then looked away, in that new way that means we can all breathe. Outside, the late light washed the plaza in honesty. A small group of employees crossed my path and stopped as if deciding whether to speak. A young developer cleared her throat. Thank you, she said, not like a fan, but like a citizen. I said, you are welcome, because this is work we owe one another, not favors for which we collect applause. That night, Sarah texted at 10 with a line that tasted like iron even over a screen. Competitor contact confirmed. Meeting recorded. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling until the old ache in my chest, anger edged with grief, took its shape and left. Tomorrow would be architecture again, but of a different kind. The bar was the kind that makes a man feel successful just for sitting down. Dark wood, bottles lined like medals, low music that forgives loud voices. From my desk, I watched the closed caption feed scroll over a wide shot of leather chairs and bad decisions. Listen, Ethan said, leaning in toward a stranger who wore a competitor's cufflinks. We can bring clients, we can bring teams, we can bring the playbook. He did not know the stranger worked for no one but a recorder. He did not know that every sentence paired an admission with a date we could prove. He did not know that the camera loved him most when he bragged. Send the file to legal, I said, and to the regulator we already briefed. Timestamp the handoff. Sarah's eyebrow lifted by a degree. Thunder? Lantern first, I said. Thunder if they keep selling the storm. They kept selling it. Before dawn, trading logs showed a panic few men admit to feeling. Shares dumped at a loss. Phones lit with a choreography of desperation as they tried to outrun the rumor we had not started and could not have stopped even if we wanted to. The market listens to numbers, not to me. At 9, we announced the truth, a reorganization that untangled reporting lines and moved good people into roles they had earned in the dark. Within minutes, the stock moved upward like a relieved breath. The men who had sold on fear watched a line chart punish them for believing their own gossip. By noon, the commission called. I took the call with my speaker on and my spine aligned. "Ms. Hale," a measured voice said, "we have questions about transactions tied to last year's merger." "You may," I said. "We have recordings, expense trails, and witness statements. My team will deliver them in an hour, and it will be the first of several hours. We will not cherry-pick for convenience." "Your cooperation is noted," the voice said, and I could hear the faintest gratitude beneath the tone. Cooperation is easy when guilt is not yours. Sarah slid a new tablet into view. "Ethan tried to enter the lobby," she said. The feed showed him striding through the glass doors like a man who believes glass prefers him, folder tucked under his arm like a sword. Security recognized him, let him pass, and stopped him at the executive elevator. He enjoyed 3 seconds of triumph and 6 seconds of bewilderment. Then Sarah's message reached my desk. "He insists on an audience." "Let him up," I said, with counsel present and cameras on. He reached the boardroom with cheeks flushed and a smile that wanted to be a smirk. He opened his folder and fanned out printouts like a magician about to name my card. Emails, photos, a screenshot of my ring on a hotel nightstand from a trip he thought I did not know about. He had brought paper cuts to a trial. "You orchestrated this," he said. "You set traps. I set rules," I said, "and you tested them in public." He looked at the directors like a child who has just remembered adults are in the room. The directors looked back like adults who have signed checks and laws. I slid a larger folder across the table to him. "This is your record," I said. "Read page 1. He read, his mouth closed. The silence showed everyone the exact moment when a story breaks and the person who told it cannot hear its echo anymore. "You can leave with whatever dignity you can carry," I said quietly. "Or you can keep pushing, and we will carry this entire file to the steps of the courthouse, and then to the press." "Blackmail," he whispered. "Accountability," I answered. Security waited without touching him. He stared at me long enough to look for the woman he thought he had married, and to find the one he had mocked. Then he gathered his prop papers and walked out without turning his back. When the boardroom door clicked shut, Sarah exhaled. "Thunder?" she asked again. "Not yet," I said. "But open the windows. Let the weather in." That evening, the business press ran a headline that read like a verdict written without adjectives. "Halcyon names founder. Ousts 5 executives for cause. Compliance reforms announced." The photograph showed glass, light, and a silhouette that could have been anyone's leader. That was the point. Regulators move slower than rumor, but faster than arrogance expects. Within 2 days, subpoenas inked themselves into our calendar. Our response team digitized, indexed, and delivered on a schedule that made even the stern faces on the other end of the Zoom soften by a millimeter. Strict men like clocks. Meanwhile, the city found its gossip. The country club cut up a handful of membership cards. A small private school sent 3 politely worded letters about openings that had suddenly closed. I did not track those items out of spite. I tracked them because consequences teach what I cannot. "Should we sue first?" a director asked in our weekly emergency session, which was now just a weekly session. "We will sue last," I said. "We lead with remediation, then truth, then law. When we sue, it will be tidy." Sarah stepped in with a stack that looked like a book you do not read for pleasure. "Depositions," she said, "from people who left, from people who stayed, from people who tried to complain and then learned silence." Her voice cut at that last word. I let it. "Schedule 1 more meeting," I said. "Invite them all. 1 room, 1 chance." "You think they will come?" she asked. "They will come because court is colder," I said. At 9 in the morning, 5 men stepped into the boardroom as if it were a boat and the floor beneath it untrustworthy water. Their suits had lost their confidence. Their faces looked older where ego had lived. Behind them sat lawyers who had spent the week saying, "That will not hold, and you need to consider your family." "Before we begin," I said, "you will note the presence of 2 regulators and our counsel recording every word. You may speak, or you may not. You may lie, and I will show you the tape that makes the lie expensive. Ethan tried the old tone anyway. Veronica, I am Ms. Hale, I said. We are done with intimacy as strategy. I tapped the screen. A slide appeared with a title only a prosecutor could love, and 5 bullet points anyone could understand. Trading activity, misuse of resources, retaliation patterns, outside solicitations. A map of favors drawn like a transit diagram across city blocks and weekends. Here is your fork in the road, I said. Sign this cooperation agreement and you keep this at civil. Refuse, and we recommend prosecution. There will be no bargaining later. This offer lives for 5 minutes. They looked at their lawyers. Their lawyers looked at the regulators. The regulators wrote with neat pens. The wall clock hummed. Michael took the pen first. He wore a look I had seen on men who finally hear the thing their mothers told them and their coaches shouted and their wives tried to say gently. No one is coming to save you from yourself. He signed and slid the folder back without meeting my eyes. 2 more followed, slower, hands trembling. Ethan waited until the 4th signature dried. He read the paper as if a loophole might bloom under his gaze. He looked up at me, and for a heartbeat I saw not the smirking man from my living room, but the student he used to be, eager to be chosen, terrified of being ordinary. This destroys me, he said. No, I said. You did that. This records it. He signed. The 5th man signed last, as people who live by momentum often do. Sarah gathered the folders. The regulators stood, nodded, and left to begin the paperwork of consequence. I thank the lawyers for their professionalism, because I am trying to build a place where even endings are dignified. Then I turned back to the men who had made small kingdoms out of other people's paychecks. Your depositions begin now, I said. You will be placed in separate rooms. You will be asked for everything, including the details you tell yourself are too petty to matter. They matter. Every small humiliation builds a culture that kills good ideas before they speak. Today, we end that currency. As security escorted them out, Ethan paused at the threshold. Did you ever love me? He asked. Not to win, just to know what ruin had cost. I loved the person you said you wanted to become, I said. He did not show up. When the door shut, I sat for 1 long minute and let my hands lay flat on the table until the nerves under my skin remembered that the room belonged to me. Then I stood and spoke to the board about the next quarter, the architecture of a company that would not need a ghost to keep it honest. That evening, reports landed that read like rain. Depositions given freely, names offered, patterns mapped. Our stock climbed again. HR forwarded the first wave of reinstatement acceptances. My calendar filled with office hours that felt like town squares. Sarah asked the question she keeps for when the light outside goes gold. Was it worth it now? I looked at the ledger, not the one in finance, the one in the people who had decided to stay. It is never worth what it cost, I said, but it is right, and right is what we do next. I walked to the window and watched the lights switch on across Halcyon's floors, one after another, not like alarms, like lives. The morning after the depositions, Halcyon breathed like a building that had learned to sleep again. Floors that used to hum with forced urgency now moved at human speed. Precise, steady, intent. I spent the first hour walking without an entourage. People made space the way a crowd parts for an ambulance, then closed the gap behind me without whispers. That was new. Respect without theater is a sign your rules are working. Sarah slid beside me with her tablet balanced like a second spine. Regulators received full data drops at 7, she said. Chain of custody is immaculate. Forensics finished a first-pass map of retaliation clusters. I want to show you a picture. Conference room 7 filled with a wall of dots and lines. Names without faces. Arrows without adjectives. Red threads showed where a request for parental leave became a demotion 6 months later. Blue threads marked performance reviews that changed tone after a declined drink. Gray showed the invisible gravity of golf. It was not one villain. It was a weather system. We build the opposite, I said. Write me the countermap. Mentorship in place of gatekeeping. Transparency where gossip thrived. Rotations that starve petty kingdoms. Already drafting, Sarah said. Also, Atlas Tech fired the executive who met them at the bar. Their board issued a statement by sunrise. Good, I said. The industry is a mirror. Let it reflect something we would show our interns. At 9, I met with Jennifer Chen, no relation. A coder Ethan once described as too academic because she refused to demo Vapor. She arrived with a slim folder and a posture that said, I know you do not have time for nonsense. Her team had turned last quarter's sketched possibility into architecture, an AI layer that translated ugly real-world logistics into graceful decisions without punishing edge cases. 3 patents filed, 1 provisional license pending. I scanned and smiled without dramatics. Fund the team, I said, and put her on the agenda for the next board. I want the directors to hear how real work sounds. On my desk, the press continued to ask for the same thing it always asks when a woman uses verbs in public. A profile. I declined gently and pointed them to the work. Profiles die. Process lives. They pivoted, as they always do, to anyone who would cry on camera. Ethan's mother obliged. I did not watch the segment. Sarah did. She apologized, Sarah said, and then she explained you to yourself. A standard dance. I kept my face still and moved the conversation back to things we could change. By noon, reinstatement meetings were producing signatures and tears in equal measure. A systems analyst who had left after a manager told her she was not branded returned with a sharper resume and a condition. No one writes my reviews alone. I shook her hand. No one should, I said. Write the policy with HR. In the afternoon, I held office hours at a simple table near the cafeteria. No screens, no waiting list. People stopped, stood, said the thing they had been saving for a safer year. A new hire asked, how do I report a small bad thing without ruining a career? I answered, by trusting that we will treat a small bad thing like a small bad thing, not as the last straw for a grudge. Justice without cruelty is a harder needle to thread than revenge. That is the work now. At dusk, I rode the elevator to the lobby and walked out into air that tasted like rain on steel. My phone vibrated once with a message from our general counsel. SEC thanked us for speed and completeness. Regulators do not thank often. I put the phone away and let the gratitude pass through me like a current that powers, not a spotlight that distorts. On the way home, I drove past the old machine shop where my father taught me the smell of cut metal. The sign was gone, the windows papered, the ghosts busy. I parked across the street and closed my eyes until memory turned from pain to instruction.
He used to say, if you leave a tool on the floor, you are asking future you to bleed. A company is a shop. We had picked up a lot of tools this week. When I reached my building, the doorman nodded the nod New York uses for both privacy and pride. Upstairs, I set my ring back in its box like a finished chapter and opened a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote a line for the next 6 months. Aftermath must be architecture. Protocol Thunder was not about fireworks. It was about ink. At 8 in the morning, Sarah and legal gathered in my office with a stack of filings so precise you could measure a desk with their edges. Insider trading brief delivered, she said. Antitrust coordination ongoing. Class action mediation timeline set. Also, 3 former managers just sent unsolicited statements corroborating retaliation patterns. They want to repair what they broke. They can start by naming what they did, I said. Then we will decide where repentance ends and re-entry begins. News broke at 9 that the commission had frozen personal brokerage accounts tied to our 5. Not punitive, preliminary. The phone lines near my office stayed quiet. Sarah tracked the heat elsewhere. 2 reached out to former colleagues for character references. None were provided. 1 attempted to wipe a home drive. Our litigation hold was already in place. The last is trying to sell a car he cannot transfer because the lien holder wants a job letter he does not have. We did not cheer. Misery is not our metric. At 10, I took a meeting with procurement. Quiet power hides there, the signature that decides which vendor gets to make payroll. We rewrote a clause that used to reward schmoozing into one that rewarded service-level truth. No more golf embedded in RFPs, I said. 3 people laughed carefully. I did not. I am serious, I added, and the laughter turned into pens moving. Noon brought the Thompson renewal. Mr. Thompson arrived with a bottle of champagne and an apology of his own.
For letting a smile sell us nonsense, he said. We should have asked for the person who did the math. I accepted both, then handed the bottle to Sarah when he left. Anonymous donation, I said. Workplace harassment prevention. In his name. Already moving, she said. At 2, HR presented the first cohort for the mentorship program we had designed on a whiteboard at midnight. 30 people across departments, paired with senior leaders who had agreed to a contract. 2 hours a month, no performance linkage, no cannibalizing credit. Will they show up? HR asked. They will, I said, partly because I will, and partly because they will like the work. 3 showed up early, 1 brought cookies. None asked for promotions. All asked versions of the same question. How do you stay firm when the room prefers you soft? We practiced sentences until their spines could remember them without their throats shaking. By late afternoon, the press had a new angle and, reluctantly, stuck to it. Not woman humiliates husband, but company repairs itself in public. Editors will always try to title your life. Your job is to insist on captions. Thunder finally rolled at 5 when Atlas Tech sent a letter to their investors disclosing inappropriate approaches by external parties. Their general counsel called me to say thank you for the heads up and to confirm that no one currently or previously at Halcyon would be considered for roles there until our investigations ended. I agreed. When the same counsel asked, too casually, whether we would consider dropping civil claims in exchange for industry stability, I said the only sentence that keeps things clean. The law is the law. On my way out, I stopped at security. The night supervisor handed me a small, clear evidence bag containing the burner phone from Ethan's office and a printed transcript of its contents. A thread glowed in bold. We can still flip this if we make her the story. I placed the bag back on the counter and slid the transcript into a folder labeled Narratives We Decline. At home, I cooked eggs and toast the way my father did when money was tight and victory looked like a full plate. The television murmured a documentary about shipbuilding, rivets, plates, ballast, weight where weight belongs. Before sleep, I wrote 3 lines in the notebook. Accountability without spectacle. Mentorship as infrastructure. Thunder in contracts, not headlines. The city answered with rain. 6 weeks wrote themselves fast. Complaint queues dropped because conversations rose. 2 managers with reputations built on fear asked for new roles and shadowed people who get results without volume. The cafeteria got louder in a good way. Arguments about architecture, not about access. Our job postings changed from rockstar and ninja, words that excuse chaos, to engineer and lead, words that carry weight. We began paying candidates for take-home exercises. If you want someone's brain, you do not steal their weekend. One morning I walked into a design review where a junior developer, Amira in her first year, pushed back on a senior architect without apology. In the silence that followed, she drew a boundary around performance versus heroics and put a dollar figure on the difference. The room did the math with her, then moved to the better plan. Later, I found a sticky note on my door. Thank you for the 5-minute rule. I kept it. Mid-month, I took a call I had been moving around my calendar for days. Ethan's mother.
Her voice held less iron and more air. "I have been talking to women," she said, "about sons and rooms and how we teach them to listen. I wanted to say, I did not help in time." "Thank you for calling," I said. "Forgiveness is not a press release. It is a boundary that stops you from drinking poison and calling it principle."
We spoke for 10 minutes about programs, not about men, and ended with a small grant to a nonprofit that trains bystanders to intervene when the laugh goes the wrong direction. Legal updates arrived like clockwork. The commission widened its scope. Settlements inched toward numbers that would sting but not end lives. Our class action mediation produced a statement of facts that named patterns without naming victims. One by one, people who had been dismissed as not a culture fit read a paragraph that admitted the culture was the problem. When the settlement hit the wire, our stock dipped for an hour and recovered before lunch. Accountability is not free. It is, however, cheaper than rot. I began spending Friday mornings on the floor. No office, no agenda, listening for friction. Friction is not failure. It is where design occurs. A line worker in facilities asked why the person who cleans the executive floor at night earns less than the person who cleans the second floor in the afternoon. We fixed it that afternoon and removed a ladder no one needed. Small fairness teaches large fairness how to walk. On a gray Thursday, security pinged my phone. Former employee parked across the street. No violation, just presence. I looked down from my window and saw Ethan on a bench, elbows on knees, looking at the building the way a boy looks at a school he has been expelled from for a reason he pretends he does not understand. For a moment, I let sorrow in. Not for our marriage, which died of ordinary selfishness, but for the hours he could have spent building instead of narrating. Then I closed the blinds. Compassion does not require access. In the afternoon, we hosted an open forum titled "The Room We Build." No stage, no mic. I started with a sentence my father would have approved of. "If you trip over a tool someone left on the floor, tell them. If they leave it there again, tell me." People laughed, then stayed to speak. A receptionist asked for a path into QA and got one. An engineer who never talked at meetings owned a whiteboard and did not let go for 20 minutes. A manager admitted he had been promoted for shipping features, not for leading people, and asked for training instead of a bigger team. We named that bravery and wrote the training. After the forum, I walked the loading dock where a forklift beeped politely and a man in a neon vest charted a pallet's route like a pilot. He nodded at me without surprise. That is the other sign your rules work. The people who keep you alive do not flinch when you show up. At sunset, Sarah brought 2 envelopes. "Government contract," she said, placing the first on my desk. "Awarded. Our compliance posture did more than any lobbyist could have." The second was thinner. "The documentary crew again." "Decline," I said. "Send them to Jennifer Amira Facilities." She grinned. "Already told them the story is a chorus." Before I left, I stopped in the same glass room where the first cohort of mentors had stumbled over introductions weeks ago. Now it sounded like a language lab. Scripts for hard conversations. Practice for praise that lands. Role plays that make managers sweat and then laugh. Growth is embarrassing up close. That is how you know it is real. On the street, a light rain began. The kind that makes a city shine. I passed a couple arguing softly about dinner. A courier balancing 2 pizzas and a life. A violinist in the station playing something that made strangers bargain with themselves. 2 more minutes, then home. I stood and listened until the music pushed all the noise to the edges. When I reached my apartment, I opened the notebook and wrote 3 more lines. Fairness is a habit. Power is a stewardship. Rooms remember who we are when we think no one is watching. I turned out the light and slept without dreams. Somewhere across the river, a man who used to live in my house was learning how to ask a customer to buy a cable they did not plan on. I wished him an honest day. Then I got ready for mine. 6 months looked different in the ledger than it did in the mirror. On paper, Halcyon posted record margins, record retention, and a safety incident rate that made insurers send fruit baskets. In the mirror, I had lighter eyes and a deeper line at the corner of my mouth where restraint lives.
Final settlement numbers landed, Sarah said, stepping into my office with a legal pad old school enough to make me smile. 3 class actions consolidated, 1 consent decree with the commission, and a public statement of facts. The amounts are meaningful. Good, I said. Justice must show up on a bank statement. We reviewed the document line by line. No spin, no evasions. Just nouns with dates. Retaliation, harassment, insider trading, misuse of funds. The statement credited our employees for raising alarms, and our auditors for surfacing truths the old managers buried under golf and noise. It also named our reforms as conditions of the decree. I wanted conditions. They keep memory awake. A director called to ask the question every director is paid to ask. Will this hurt growth? It will prune it, I said. Pruned trees bear better fruit. He laughed, then stopped when he realized I was not joking. At noon, we held a closed-door meeting with team leads whose org charts had been shaped by the old culture and then rebuilt like bones after a bad break. The first agenda item was money. Our compensation bands were written for exceptions, I said. We will rewrite them for fairness. Spreadsheets appeared. Increases and adjustments moved across the grid like small thunderstorms. Someone asked whether we could phase the changes in over 2 years. No, I said. If we can afford to say it in a press release, we can afford to put it in payroll. After the meeting, I ate a sandwich at my desk like a civilian and read an email from a woman who had left 2 years ago and now wanted to return, with conditions. I need you to promise my job description is not a mirage, she wrote. I replied quickly, we do not write mirages, we write verbs. Come see. Mid-afternoon, Sarah slid a file in front of me. Ethan's counsel requested a meeting to discuss humanitarian considerations. Her voice did not drip. I hire people who do not drip. What does humanitarian mean today? I asked. Reduced repayment schedules, sealed records, and a letter from you suggesting leniency at sentencing, should it come to that. She watched my face and added quietly, Michael's psychiatrist sent a note about stabilization. He volunteers twice a week now. I stared at the skyline until it resolved into grids and air. Draft 2 letters, I said. 1 for Michael that says genuine repair matters. 1 for Ethan that says accountability is not cruelty. Noted, she said. By early evening, the decree went live. Our stock dipped and recovered. In my inbox, 10 employees wrote thank you notes to legal for explaining the decree in plain English. I forwarded the notes to legal with a subject line that said, "You are seen." Lawyers rarely get flowers. Before I left, I walked the 2nd floor and stopped at a corkboard outside facilities. Handwritten notes covered it. Requests, compliments, jokes about the coffee machine, a doodle of a forklift with a cape. A sticky note near the bottom said, "We changed the light bulbs in the hallway before anyone asked." I added one underneath. I noticed. On the sidewalk, a reporter approached with a microphone. "Ms. Hale, any comment on the settlement?" "Yes," I said, and looked into the lens. "Fair play costs real money. We are paying it. We are building a company where no one has to buy silence to keep their job." The clip aired that night. People called it calm. It felt like gravity. The boardroom had once displayed a portrait of a man who never smiled. Donor, golfer, kingmaker. We moved it to the archive and installed glass. Not metaphorical glass, actual windows. On a rainy Tuesday, we hosted a roundtable with women from across the industry. Founders, union reps, line engineers, a judge who wore flats and ruined 3 myths with 1 sentence. The topic was power that does not borrow cruelty. No stage, no heroic lighting, just chairs and candor. "I am tired of being the only one who remembers what the receptionist knows," a CTO said. "Write it down," I replied. "Institutional memory should not live in one woman's head." The judge smiled without showing teeth. Policies prevent the worst of us from overrunning the best of us, she said. Write policies you would want your daughter to walk under. A union rep nodded. And your son, she added. Teach him to read the room he enters. We left with action items, vendor clauses that travel, a cross-company incident protocol, and an agreement to share templates instead of horror stories. In the hallway afterward, a junior engineer stopped me. Is it okay to say this feels nice? It is okay, I said. It is also okay to say it should have felt like this the whole time. That afternoon, Sarah briefed me on the last dangling thread. The nonprofit that trains bystanders is launching a pilot here, and Ethan's mother sent a note. I opened it. The handwriting looked like a school teacher's. She thanked me for the grant, for not humiliating her publicly, for insisting on behavior instead of blood. She also said she had told Ethan that love without boundaries is not love. I did not reply. Some letters deserve to live without echo. Near closing, I walked past the auditorium and heard music. Amira's mentor cohort was rehearsing for an internal talk they had titled, How to Disagree with a Microphone Off. The room vibrated with laughter, the kind that lands on ideas, not on people. A man in a faded band tee demonstrated how to write a bug report that critiques code, not character. A woman in facilities raised her hand and asked whether she could teach a session on how to ask for help before the bucket overflows. The answer was yes. On my desk, 2 frames sat side by side. One held my father in his shop, hands on a machine that refused to lie. The other held a still from our all-hands meeting, where 5,000 names filled a blue screen behind a small person with a microphone. I looked from one to the other until past and present aligned into a straight line I could stand on. When I stepped into the elevator, the night guard nodded. "Light looks good in there," he said, meaning the windows. "That is the plan," I said. Autumn gave way to the kind of winter that sharpens corners. The decree's deadlines became rhythms. Checklists replaced adrenaline. Rumor got bored and left. One evening, I drove to the small house where Ethan had been living with boxes that refused to unpack. I parked across the street and watched through a window because I do not enter rooms I am no longer invited into. He was alone at the kitchen table with a stack of papers and a cheap lamp that made the scene look like an undergraduate's last night before finals. The television flickered. He did not turn it up. My phone buzzed. "Sarah. Judge scheduled the first hearing. Date set. Michael submitted proof of community service. 2 letters ready to send." I typed back, "Send both." A week later, Ethan's counsel sat across from me in a glass room that had seen better men confess worse things. He spoke efficiently. "Mr. Cross requests," he began. "Mr. Cross can request what the decree allows," I said. "He will repay what the record shows. He will accept the finding of fact he signed. He will live with the ordinary consequences of ordinary fraud." The lawyer nodded. He had already told his client this. He slid a separate envelope across the table. "From his mother," he said. "She asked that I hand it to you." I opened it later in my office. Inside, a photograph of Ethan at 15, braces and hope. On the back, 3 words in a mother's hand: teach them early. I placed the photo in a drawer labeled Lessons and stood looking out over a city that had learned my name without learning my story. A ping on my laptop pulled me back. HR had logged a note: 0 harassment complaints this quarter. Another ping: facilities had updated the compensation spreadsheet. Another: Jennifer's division announced a patent grant. Another: Amira's talk had filled in 15 minutes. I walked to the lobby for no reason other than to feel the floor under my shoes. The receptionist waved. The guard looked up from a crossword. A courier signed a clipboard and grinned at the candy bowl we keep stocked because small grace is still grace. At the door, I paused and looked back. The portrait that used to watch this room from the far wall was gone. In its place, a window. People crossed the lobby without glancing up, as if light had always been there. That is the point of windows. Once you install them, the room forgets the dark. Outside, the air felt honest. I turned my collar up and walked into it. Spring returned without ceremony, which is my favorite way for anything to arrive. Halcyon's plaza filled with people eating lunches they did not rush and arguing in good faith about architectures that would not punish users. Our mentorship program needed a waiting list. Our incident response plan bored the board, in the best possible way. Stability does not trend, it compounds. The last hearing came and went. The judge, flats again, smile like a scalpel, accepted the consent decree, praised our cooperation, and reminded the room that systems become what they reward. Ethan looked smaller, like a man who had finally stopped trying to take up space with noise. Michael spoke briefly about repair, not redemption. The others stood without talking. I left before anyone could frame a photo that would make this mine. In my office that evening, I opened the drawer marked lessons and took out the photograph of Ethan at 15. I set it next to a picture of myself at the same age. Hair wild, hands black with grease from my father's shop, smile fierce because the machine finally ran. We are all somebody's child, standing in a doorway we do not yet know how to name. Teach them early. Teach them again. Write the rules down. Sarah knocked and entered without waiting because we do not make each other perform permission. Government audit closed, she said. Clean. And the apprenticeship program filled in 3 hours. Put a second cohort on the calendar, I said. She hesitated. You never answered the documentary crew. I did, I said, by not answering. We stood a moment, listening to the hum of a company doing the work it says on the tin. Do you ever miss the mask? She asked. No, I said. Masks are heavy. She smiled. The windows look good. Leave them open, I said. I walked to the glass and watched a storm graze the horizon without arriving. In its light, the building reflected itself. Floors and bones and people who had learned a different way to breathe. Revenge had been the spark. Accountability was the engine. What we kept was the architecture. I turned off the lights and left the room to its windows. He sees me sometimes, on a magazine cover he did not buy, in a headline he did not click, walking past the electronics store where he learns to ask without assuming the sale. He tells himself a story that makes the loss tolerable. I do not edit it for him. When people ask what happened, I give them the only version that matters at work and at home. A room remembered who owned it, then installed windows so no one forgot again. If that made your chest lift, even a little, write the rule you wish your room had. Pin it where someone will trip over it tomorrow. If you want more stories where the quiet person in the corner picks up the ledger and the gavel without raising her voice, like and subscribe. We post new ones every week. And if a laugh lands on you like a dare, hold your ground. Receipts have gravity.